Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen, director at Gaper.io. I'm here with Ben Hseih, one of the co-founders of Synapbox.com. Good afternoon, Ben.
Hey, good afternoon, Mark. Thank you for having me today.
Great. I'm glad you could make it. So could you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah, great. So currently, I'm one of the co-founders of Synapbox. We launched in the beginning of 2018, and we're currently using a combination of emotional recognition, eye tracking, and surveys to understand consumer behavior towards advertisements. Prior to this, this is the third business I founded. I took a break in between founding two different startups and worked for a short stint of 2 years in venture capital as well. And then prior to all of that, I've always been interested in entrepreneurial work, whether it's, selling baseball cards in the park when I was a kid to, stock trading and everything, stock trading, working at a hedge fund to working on startups. And my background has always been on the business end of things, whether it's sales, fundraising, or general strategy as a whole.
Cool. So just out of curiosity, you have any Barry Bonds or Will Clark?
I think it's a bit too early to call. I'll admit, using this opportunity, I am keeping a close eye on the markets. I think that's, there's a lot of stocks out there that are very good stocks, especially will benefit from the coronavirus that have been undersold seriously. Just one example, and we're using this right now today, Zoom. I think Zoom is gonna be good because their user growth is very heavily tied to their revenue.
I've noticed it this week.
Yeah. Interestingly, unlike Slack, which got slammed in the markets, seems like their user curve is not really correlated to revenue. But anyway, that's a different story.
Yeah, different story altogether. We won't go over the reasons why.
Okay.
So, can you go over your experience with remote employment, both as a remote employee and as a remote employer?
So I guess I'll start with me on the side of being the employee. I've experienced it in the past, and I'll be frank. Productivity is definitely not as great. You do sit at home. There's a lot of distractions in general, and you're always just trying to figure out ways to sort of, quote unquote, game the system. And I feel like this is natural. And I bring this up only because I feel like it's very important for managers and leaders to really understand this part. That people will be slacking at home. Productivity will not be quite the same as in the office, and ultimately, you really have to trust these individuals. But from my perspective, yeah, I would basically front load a lot of work and make sure I deliver what I needed to do and be accountable for my actions. Is how I viewed remote work as a whole. Especially for someone like myself, I tend to like to work outside of traditional work hours. So yeah, front load the work, get what I need to get done, and then hand it in when it's requested by my manager.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been on both sides of it too, and I understand. I think though after a while, people do get into a certain rhythm. I think it's harder if you have small kids at home, which I don't have that issue. So, but you do see that. But I think actually developers tend to like it because they tend to be a little more solitary anyway. So, and they like, I remember development, all of a sudden something would come to you at 10 o'clock at night and you pull out the computer, all of a sudden you start coding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Cool. So what do you think is the future of remote employment? And what do you think needs to be done differently to make it even better and more effective?
Well, I think the future of remote work, as the world itself is getting more connected, literally by the hour, by the day. It's a part of a work's, business's processes to include remote work. And not for every single business, but especially in the startup world, especially if you're looking to engage some of the best employees around, especially engineers, for instance, you really have to provide that option, even from just a talent acquisition perspective. It's going to be integrated. You have to have remote work, whether it's 100% or a part of it. Otherwise, I feel like you're missing out a lot on the business end. You're not really having your options available to all the potential. I feel like people should definitely take that into account when they're building their businesses from the bottoms up.
Yeah, and I noticed it especially in the Bay Area and probably other large markets that it's really hard to find good talent here in the Bay Area, and it's very competitive.
It's very expensive. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, that competition brings expense. Yeah.
Expenses. So especially if you are not in a position to pay top dollar, for the best engineers in the world, then how can you work around that? I do believe There is definitely great talent in Silicon Valley when it comes to engineers, but there's also great talent in other parts of the world as well. There's some great hubs of engineering, and how do you really tap into that, right? And having good remote work structures in place that are structured around non-traditional hours to take into account time differences as well is critical, for the effectiveness of it.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the tools are going in more collaboration, around the clock and things like that.
Yeah.
So tell me the story behind Synapbox and what's the journey been like?
It's been a very interesting one. So I joined as a later co-founder. So my other co-founder, Christina, she's the original founder. We used to be a consumer research agency business. I actually had found this company. I got in touch with Christina when when my fund back in Hong Kong actually was running an accelerator program with Infinity Motors. They had come through as an agency, and then we basically managed to have the opportunity to work together, work with the client a lot, and then we pivoted to a complete software business, running as a platform very similar to a Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey. And then, with this idea of removing all the hardware elements, focusing on the software only, we went out and raised a pre-seed round, built an MVP, and then grew our revenue. We were very lucky. We've had revenue since day one. And then looking to really bootstrap along the way, and playing along a couple angel tickets here and there, and then we're gearing up to raise our institutional round pretty soon.
Cool. And why don't you just tell me who your target customer is?
So we have a very wide, broad base of customers that we work with today. Some of the clients include Uber, Warner, Colgate, so large B2C companies that use ads or content as a form of customer acquisition. As wide as vague as that sounds, but that essentially our technology can be applied across the board. And generally speaking, we're selling to marketing teams, consumer research teams, anyone that are looking to gain additional and more granular insights on their advertisements and content as a whole. We can definitely work with them.
Oh, very good. And I do believe that they're just starting to tap the powers of video. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get bigger. So how have you incorporated the idea of remote at Synapbox?
Yeah, it's an interesting story for us because we've always had an element of remote work, but of course, in today's the pandemic that we're going through, we have pivoted to 100% remote work. But even prior to that, we're running various teams. We have a team here in San Francisco. We still run remote teams on product in Mexico City. We also have a small team in Colombia as well. Luckily, I think from a time zone perspective, it's been relatively good. We're only like, a couple hours ahead or behind, depending on where you are. So we've always had a sense of that. And, we do also allow our employees to work from home as well. So our transition through this, through what we're going through today, hasn't been too difficult. And we actually see this as a great opportunity to refine and polish the processes as well. Yeah. But I feel like it's always been, we can talk about, what kind of tools are available, but I feel like there's a ton of research on that and you can easily Google these things. I mean, you're talking about things like, what tools you're using for email or internal messaging, time tracking, project management, Trello, Slacking, etc. Right? But in the end of the day, I feel like teams really need to figure out what works well for them. There is no real model that you can just copy and paste in, and definitely don't copy and paste what you're doing in the office. Just because you have your 9 a.m. stand-ups in the boardroom doesn't mean you should do the same online. And ultimately, it's all down to, in my opinion, it's just all down to trust and accountability. Making sure that, you are making people accountable for their actions and making sure they deliver on that, but allow them to do it in their own way, right? Don't make them work specific structure hours. Just trust that they're going to do it. You of course, as a leader, you want to be able to kind of track people and see what people are doing, but you don't want to be overbearing at the same time. Because if you start doing that, it breaks the whole trust down and the whole cycle and the feedback loop that you are that you're trying to build with your founders, colleagues, or whoever they may be, will start to break down over time because they just feel like you're just don't trust them, and they will just start trying to figure out ways to convince you that they're working rather than actually spending that time to do the work.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, from my experiences, that's you've hit it right on. And once you built that trust, it's amazing. I think you notice that they're more productive. They want to work for you. You have less, retention and all those things, or better retention, I should say.
Yeah. And then once you build that trust as well, I mean, from maybe an output in terms of hours might be
Mhm.
less so than what they're doing in the office, but the quality of work goes up.
Right.
I think a general expectation is that, look, they're not going to put in as many hours at home. That's for
Mhm.
sure. There's just too many distractions. I've been through it myself, but, when they do actually focus and get down to it, it gets better. The
Yeah.
quality of work actually goes up. Maybe the hours go down as a whole. And I feel like if you are managing a team, it's very important for the individuals and managers to understand these expectations, but also think about, especially now that everyone's going to do remote work, is list out the priorities of your business. What are the critical, like the really key critical things are, right?
Mhm.
And then make sure that stuff gets done. Your employees aren't going to go above and beyond to go and do random things that they haven't been told to do, but make sure like whatever the priorities for business are, it's not up to them to figure that out. It's up to you. And then make sure that they're accountable for whatever it is to do so. And of course, rearrange your OKRs to be relevant for remote work as well. Because I do feel like in-person office work and remote work, the OKRs do switch up because the methodology to get to the final goal will also be a little bit different.
Okay, could you just explain OKRs? Not everybody might not understand that.
So this is, I believe it's something that Google developed, objectives and key results.
Mhm.
It's basically a company's KPI metrics to track the performance of a company as a whole. OKRs are one of them. I think there's various methods. I can't say which is better or the other, but every company should have some kind of, let's call it a North Star of some point. That's something that the whole entire company is looking towards. So essentially everyone's on the same page, right?
Mhm.
And having everyone on the same page, moving in the same direction, whether you're in the office or working remotely is critical, right? Because if you start to have people not on the same page, working on different things, you just an incredible amount of slippage occurs, and that's when you're losing a lot of hours. It's very demotivating to put in a lot of hours and not moving and not getting the traction as well. So OKRs or whatever it may be, just make sure you set your North Star straight, but also the North Star should be relevant to how you're doing work as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's true. Even if for companies that people come into the office every day, I think it's just a little bit easier to track it when they're in the
Yep.
office. I think when you have a lot of remote workers, you have to have a better way to really have a sense of what's going on out there. So.
Yeah, I mean, because it's much more difficult to understand how people are thinking, feeling just through video, right? I
Yeah.
mean, even though we're speaking via video call, but if we're in person, I can read your body reactions, I can see you smiling or not, right? Lots of different things, and when it's remote, like I kind of mentioned before, you got to have data points to figure out people are happy or sad or how they're productive or not. But when it comes to online tracking, it's a lot different, right? And yeah, I mean, there's more than ways. I mean, there's invasive ways, like you jump on a call, you talk to them and figure what's going on. But there's also other invasive methodologies as well. You can check their calendars, Slack statuses, the green lights on, the general response times as a whole. You don't always have to check in to see what people are doing. So it has to be a combination of those two things to kind of create that trust as a whole.
Yeah. So finally, there's companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How important do you think these types of setups are going to be in the future, especially when it comes to hiring quality people and quickly? I mean, seems to be the key with a lot of startups.
Yeah, hiring quality and speed is critical. Every hire that you bring on board will change your company culturally. So you really want to ensure that you have good partners in place to really help identify these individuals. And I feel like at Gaper, as a tool, I feel like it really helps to open up that hiring funnel for people, not only accessing local talents, but also talent abroad and in different places as well. And whether or not you might hire them, but it's important for the hiring manager to understand what's available in the market as well. So generally speaking, I do believe in tools like Gaper. If they can help people with building a business and scaling, then yeah, it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, well, thank you. This has been great. Really enjoyed talking to you today.
Yes, me too.
And hope maybe we'll after this is all over with, we'll meet in Millbrae or something.
Yeah, hopefully let's get this over and done with, hopefully. Yeah, I trust, hope you're well. I hope everyone else out there is staying safe as well. And I think yeah, everyone just stay at home, do some social distancing for a couple of weeks, and we'll be all good at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I do. I wish Synapbox a lot of luck, and thank you for talking today.
Yes, thank you for your time too. All right, cheers. Thank
Bye.
you. Have a good day. Bye.